Temples stood in ruins, the scent of burning incense thick in the air. The walls, once untouched by time, bore the scars of those who had fought to control history itself. And in the center of it all, High Priestess Zainab stood. She had carried the burden of truth for far too long. Now, she placed it in their hands. There were only two paths left. One would end this war forever. The other would begin it again. One of them would have to be erased. Not just from this past, but from all pasts. From the fabric of history itself. Gone, as though they had never existed at all. The weight of the decision settled over them like an eclipse, heavy and inescapable. Nyala could not choose. She had fought too hard, lost too much. Power was all she had ever known. And to give it up now, even for the sake of time itself, was something she could not bring herself to do. Jabari could not choose. He had fought for a throne that had never been his, had lived the reality where he was finally king. To erase that now, to return to the uncertainty of his former life, was a burden too great to bear. Kamari had already been erased once. He had nothing left to lose, and yet he would not surrender himself again. He had spent too long fighting to be remembered. He would not let history swallow him twice. And so, it was Ismat who finally stepped forward. She had everything she had ever wanted. She had reclaimed her name. She had walked the palace halls not as a servant, but as a noble woman, as the person she had once been. But she was not that person anymore. The past had changed, but she did not belong in it. She was a fragment of a life that had been stolen, and if she remained, the world would never be whole again. The others had kingdoms, power, legacies. They had roles in history that had always belonged to them. But she had been a ghost, even before the Lotus had given her another chance. Perhaps she had never been meant to exist in this version of time. She hated her life as a servant and a queen. And so, with steady hands, she reached for the Lotus, not to rewrite history, but to erase herself from it. The petals crumbled between her fingers, dissolving into the air like dust carried by the wind. Time rippled, the world shuddered, and Ismat was gone. Not just from this moment, not just from the rewritten past. She was erased from everything. The palace halls that had once been hers never bore her footsteps. The servants who had once whispered her name never knew she had existed. The brother she had loved never grieved for her. The past reset, but something felt incomplete. Jabari walked the palace halls, no longer a king, but a prince once more. He trained, he listened, he waited. But there were times he would wake in the night with the taste of something unfamiliar on his tongue, as though he had once held power he could no longer grasp. Jabari always believed that he deserved the throne, that he had been denied his rightful place in history. When he finally ruled, he realized too late that the weight of power changes a man, and that his reign had been built on fear, not strength. He learned that power without wisdom is destruction, and that his time had not yet come. Njala sat on her throne again, the weight of a crown heavy upon her brow. She ruled as she always had, as she always would. But sometimes, in the quiet moments, she felt as though something had been taken from her. Maybe Jabari was ready to be king. So, she planned to abdicate the throne and install Jabari as the king. She was done with the throne. She had spent all her life believing power was absolute. But in the end, she learned that power is fleeting and control is an illusion. She learned that true leadership is not about crushing opposition, but about recognizing the limits of power. Kamari led armies, his name still etched into the histories of war. But there were gaps in the stories, moments that should have been filled, names that should have been remembered. At the end, he saw that Destruction does not give a man meaning, only purpose does. He learned that being remembered is not the same as being important, and that true legacy is built not through power, but through the lives one touches. No one could name what was missing, but they all felt it: an emptiness, a space that should not have been there, a shadow in history that did not belong to any ruler, any warrior, any noble. A memory they had never made. Only Zainab remembered. She had seen the cycle play out before. She had witnessed the past break and mend, only to fracture again. And now, she stood before the temple once more, her hands folded, her voice steady as she left the only warning she could offer: the lotus gives and the lotus takes, but those who chase fate are always swallowed by it. And Ismat, in the end, she made the ultimate sacrifice. After learning that identity is not found in status or revenge, but in the moments, the people, and the choices that shape a life. But time was not done, not yet. Somewhere beyond the palace, in the depths of a hidden place untouched by war or kings, a seed of a new lotus is planted. This time, no one knew it existed, but time was patient, and fate was always waiting. Would history repeat itself once again? The lotus in full bloom, the wind stirring its petals as if whispering a story untold. The story was not over. It never was.